Well, welcome to the Far-Reaching Ministries podcast. I am Edward Amaya, and I'm being joined by our founder and executive director, Wes Bentley. Wes, it's great to have you here again. It's been great to be able to sit down and kind of go through some stories. On our last episode, where you had a chance to give us an update on several countries, and we want to take a few minutes and just expand a little bit. The Lord has had you involved in Eastern Europe for a long time. Your roots go back to Russia, so you have an understanding of that world really well and what the gospel's doing. But if you don't mind, can you give us an update? What's going on in Ukraine?
Well, we've got quite a few projects beyond the chaplains going on. We're in the process of building an orphanage. We have built 2 homes that were orphanages. It was for a family with each about 10 kids. And we purchased the land for the second one, and it's supposed to be able to hold at least 300 kids. The problem right now is getting people who will do construction. The military is literally taking everybody to the front. And when we were building those last 2 homes, we lost 8 construction crews because what would happen is the military would just show up in a surprise and grab everybody that was working on the house and ship them off to the front line. So it's going to take a while to get this done. One of the things that really hit me when I was over there talking to Vitaly, and again, Vitaly is the brother that we're working with. Vitaly had told me that, that a lot of times he would go through a city and they see a little Down syndrome little boy or a Down syndrome little girl sitting on the curb with this bewildered look in his face. And he'd say, well, where's the parents? And he said, well, he goes, a lot of these people have just let these kids, they're kind of, people in the East aren't the same as the West. And sometimes they don't want that problem anymore. I mean, there's many people that would never give up their child, but there are those few that, there's a lot of people that are into alcohol and all of a sudden it's a burden they don't have to take care of. And this child looks bewildered, scared, doesn't understand why isn't mom and dad there? Why am I not being fed? And I told Vitaly, I said, every one of those kids we find, we will take them. We're not going to leave any behind. And one of the very hard stories he shared with me is he'd called his wife one day and he said, do you mind if I bring home the 6-month-old baby girl? And his wife said, what's going on? He said, the mother's a prostitute. She hasn't been home for 3 days. The baby has not been picked up. It has not had its diaper change. It's had no milk, no water. And unfortunately, it was taken into emergency. And before we could get any paperwork to get that child, the mother came and grabbed the child and left the city. And guys, I don't think this is over with. I really, in my heart, am determined to try to find that child. I believe that this is, again, where we leave the 99 to go and find the one. And I think we have a responsibility to do this. Vitaly had also shared with me that there was one family that they were giving food to. The mother was living with her boyfriend. They had a little boy that was handicapped, and it gets to the place and the child isn't there. And so he says, where's the child? And they said, well, he's been bad. And all of a sudden he hears screaming from the top of the barn. And he goes up there and he breaks into the barn, and this little child, the boyfriend had beaten him up pretty badly. And his reason was he had eaten all the food. And of course, at this point, guys, in situations like this is where I step in and say, if you touch that child again, you're going to get a whole lot worse than what he gets. And, I will turn him into the police, but a lot of times they just don't respond. And it's very frustrating to me, but to my knowledge, the child is safe now. Matter of fact, now that I thought of it, I want to give Vitaly a call tonight and have him look into it again to make sure. But there's all these typical reasons of the things that we're going through. And so, I told him that when we build this orphanage, I kind of want to, for anybody who's ever been to Austria or Germany and Bavaria, when they build their houses, they paint flowers on the balconies. It's very beautiful, picturesque. And Ukraine can be a lot like that in the spring, the summer, and the fall. And I want to build it like that, even painting the flowers on the buildings so that when these children grow up, they really feel like they have a home. We want to hire people that will really love these children. And, if they're going to work for us, if we see that they're not the type that's going to really be caring for them like it was their own child, I won't keep them. I want people that will have a heart for a child. And, one of the things I've noticed many times over the years of being in Russia and other countries. We would bring in teams from America. And something that people are very unconscious of, but they're always drawn towards the cute little girl or the cute little boy, and the child that's maybe not as attractive as others is forgotten. And I often look for those children. They need you to go up and talk to them and play with them and put your arm around them and make them feel loved. And sometimes we don't do that. We all have our shortcomings, and hopefully we want to grow from them. On the other side, down in Odessa, we had met a pastor named Fedor. Fedor is a very interesting man. I don't think I've ever met anyone quite like him. He was a wealthy man. He was into the money exchange business. And he felt like the Lord told him to give it all up and start taking in the drug addicts and the alcoholics. And so every night he would bring home 5, 6, 7 people into his home. He would feed them, bathe them, and if he could, clothe them. And he said many times they would steal from him. They'd get up in the middle of the night and steal to go get drugs. And yet Fedor didn't lose his heart. And he talked about one point he got down to all he had left was a jar of lard. Now, both in Russia and the Ukraine, they consider lard somewhat of a delicacy. They take it and they spread it across bread. And I've had it, not a big fan of it, but they like it. And one day he was taking the jar of lard to go feed these, hobos, and his wife started yelling at him, "This is all we have left for the children." And he said, "I have to be obedient." And so he left and he went and fed him, and he was coming back and really feeling downcast. And someone he knew pulled up in a car and said, "Can I give you a ride?" And he said yes. And he got in the car, and on the way home, the guy stopped at a grocery store and bought him 3 months worth of groceries. Wow. And Fedor has just told me how over and over God has done things like this. One of the great testimonies he gave was that he needed, I think, somewhere around 700 loaves of bread a day. And the Lord told him to go and ask this one baker for the bread, and he did. Well, the guy was not a Christian. He was a Muslim, and he cursed him and he threw him out. And when Fedor left, he felt like maybe he'd misunderstood. He had embarrassed God's name. He was feeling guilty about it. But the next day, the Lord told him to go back, and it happened again. This went on for 39 days. On the 40th day, a friend said, "Wait a minute, there's a Christian baker in town, and why don't you go see them?" So he did. And the people were very kind, but they said, "Fedor, we're just getting on our feet. We'd like to help you with this, but it's going to be about a year." He's feeling, again, like he's lost the battle when the phone rings, and it was the man who had kicked him out. And he said, "Why didn't you come?" And he said, "Well, I had another meeting." Well, the guy told him to come over. His machinery had broken down, and he said, "Listen, I've got 200 loaves of bread to give you." And Fedor said, "Well, I need 700. And the guy cursed him, but he gave him the bread. Wow. Now, this has been going on, I think, for 14 years now.
14 years.
Yeah. And, this guy, he continues to give Fedor the bread. He doesn't understand, but God is blessing his business because he is giving to Fedor. And Fedor does believe that in time this man will come to know Christ as his Savior. So we see the hand of God working in many ways. Guys, there's a lot more to this story that I could tell, but I want to be careful about this because I don't want to cause a problem from him through other people that might hear this podcast and try to interrupt what's going on. But we've been investing in Fedor. Fedor has 200 elderly people. In Ukraine, you always have people that are not good people. And what's happening over there is that a son will meet a girl. He doesn't have his own place, so he wants his mom's place. And they take their parents and, they're in their 70s and 80s and drop them off at the doorstep of Fedor in the middle of the night. And Fedor has to get up and go check outside at nighttime because he says, in the winter, people can freeze to death. And if they drop one of these people off, and he's taken in so many elderly people that have passed away that the city gave him his own graveyard. And they have over 200 elderly people that they buried, I guess, in the last 14 years. And Far-Reaching Ministries went in last year and we built a lot of container-style homes for him to keep these people. But when you go into a room and say there's 15 in there, there's just enough room to walk between the beds. There's no chairs. There's no place to sit. and people can only sit on their bed. There's nothing behind you to lean up against unless you're against the wall. So people kind of just learn to sit with their legs crossed. And I noticed some of them didn't have any legs. They lost their legs. And so Fedor had told me that he wants to build a home for these people. And he said he needed $160,000 to buy the property to build the home. And I told Fedor I would give him the money and help him build it. And the next day was Sunday morning at the church, and Fedor got up on the stage, and I'd kind of told Fedor about my work ethic because Fedor works all the time. And I said, Fedor, literally for 30 years, I only took off 1 or 2 weekends a year. I was either overseas or I was speaking in a church. I have somewhere between 3,200 and 3,500 legs of flights in my life, Wow. And so I'm always on the road, but I'm not geared towards leisure, guys. I know a lot of people, they love going to the beach, or if I'm at the beach with my staff having a picnic, I like it. But just to go down there by myself, I'm just not geared towards leisure. I'm geared towards work. And so I'd been sharing with Fedor about my life, and Fedor got up on stage that day and he said, yesterday, for the first time in my life, I met someone who I thought was like me. And he said, he told me that he was going to buy the property so we could build a home for all these elderly people. And he said, so many people have promised this and never come through. He said, but I prayed and I said, Lord, so many people promise, but they never keep the word. And he said, the Lord told me this man will keep his word. Well, we have bought the land. And, guys, I don't know how much we'll have to invest, $500,000, $1 million. We haven't raised the money, but I'll still spend it. What I want for these elderly people is I don't want them to be afraid. We have a program in Ukraine and Russia. It's called Potatoes for Grandmothers. And it is designed to give them enough food to survive. And a lot of times when we come to the houses, we'll bring several months of food at one time. And these people will break down and cry. They'll say, I have never seen so much food in my life. And, when you're old, it's hard when you don't have anyone. You're alone. You're lonely. Nobody stops by to say hi to you except maybe another grandmother like you. And sometimes they can't afford to turn the heat on. And the way that I want to build the orphanage, I want there to be rooms for 2 people where there's 2 beds and there's also 2 easy chairs where they can sit down and their bodies cannot ache. One of the real sad things, there was a mother in there. She was probably 80 years old. I don't think she's got long for the world, but her son told her, I'll be back to see you, and he hasn't been back in 3 years. And I said, Fedor, will he ever come back and see his mother? He goes, it's doubtful. And yet every day she says, my son is coming to see me. And I can't imagine a son treating his parent like that, my mother is now 89 years old, and I take care of her. I've taken care of her for years. And I believe it's the way we're supposed to be. It's when we're young, our parents take care of us. When we get older, our children are supposed to take care of us in our old age. And, my mother took care of me when I was young and in her old age. She's still spry. She goes to 4 or 5 Bible studies a week. She still works 1 day a week and goes out with her friends, goes on vacation. She looks like she's 60 years old. And, but I think that we should care for these people, but it's more than just providing a home. It's a security of knowing I will eat today. There'll be a meal for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. If I get sick, someone will take me to the hospital. If the bill is expensive, they'll say, well, your life isn't worth that, so you're just going to have to die. We're not going to do stuff like that. In a situation where treatment is not going to do any good, of course, then there's nothing we can do. But when there is a chance, we always want to try to take care of that person. We had a lady in another country, and she was very sick, and we took her to the hospital, and they thought she had cancer. And my staff called me and said something like this may cost $20,000, and I told them to spend it. The great news was it wasn't cancer, and so we didn't need to spend the money. But, that woman loves the Lord. She loves us, and she's pretty much been alone her entire life, has no one. And, we are going to get a home for her. We've done this for several people. There were two women in the Ukraine that when the Russians invaded were running. One was a mother in her 60s. Her daughter was about 40, but she was mentally handicapped. She was only probably like 6 years of age with her mental capacities. In the process of running, they were both shot. Now, guys, I was a professional shooter in the Marine Corps. I was what was called a PMI, a primary marksmanship instructor, and I'd shot battalion and division matches. And my coaches actually said to me at one time, Wes, you're so good with weapons, I think you could shoot the Olympics. And I could have gone on and become a sniper, but I knew that this wasn't what God chose for my life. I knew that it was the wrong road, so I didn't pursue it. And I don't ever have any regrets about it at all. But I'm a crack shot as a marksman. If I shoot something, it drops. And I do some hunting. I don't hunt. I don't enjoy killing animals for the sake of killing them, but I do hunt for meat to give to people. I've shot quite a few animals and given the meat to U-Turn for Christ. And I was a person who used iron sights. What that means is the iron sight on the weapon. I never used a scope, and so I am more familiar with iron sights. But even at 500 meters, I can tell the difference between a woman and a soldier. So whoever shot these women, I think he knew it was. Well, they were taken into a Ukrainian field hospital. The wounds were not severe. They operated them. They took out the bullets. They didn't let them stay the night, and they didn't give them a meal. They said, we're sorry, but we have so many severely wounded coming in. You have to leave. And fortunately, some people from Calvary Chapel found them, and we took them in. And I remember that the daughter, Luke was telling me, Luke oversaw the project, and Luke is former FBI, former Marine Corps Special Forces. And Luke said that, that when this daughter had her first bowl of hot borscht, which is a kind of a cabbage beet soup, she just talked about how delicious it was. She was so thankful for this soup and this piece of bread. And then so I made the decision. We purchased an apartment for the mother and the daughter. Since that time, they found out the mother has a tumor and that she may die of cancer. Well, I had Luke tell the mother, listen, I don't want you to worry about your daughter. We will make sure she's in a Christian home, that she's fed, she has warm clothing, the heat's on in the winter, that she's taken to church, and she's loved. Because if I was a father and I had a handicapped child and I had no money and I was dying, the one thing that I would want to know is, would somebody please take care of my child? And truthfully, guys, I do have a handicapped child. My son is. He's a very smart young boy, but emotionally, he's like a 13 or 14-year-old kid. But I wouldn't change him. That kid, every night, comes into my room, Dad, I love you. And he always wants to try to tell me how much he loves his father, and I tell him how much I love him. And I realize that God allows this to happen sometimes, and I think one is to teach us compassion, to teach us sacrifice. I don't consider it to have ever been a sacrifice for me. It's always been a blessing. But I really just want to take care of these Ukrainian people. And, guys, I actually had a Hollywood producer meet with me many, many years ago. I think he spent about 10 hours with Vicki and I. We were down in your LAX, and this guy had like 8 studios, and he had done movies with a lot of big stars, from Schwarzenegger to Kiefer Sutherland. And he wanted to do a movie about my life, but he wanted to make me out to be this great soldier war hero in the Sudan. And I just said no, because 1, the story wasn't true. 2, it took God's glory and gave it to a man, which is not where it belongs. And I've had many people try to get me to write a book, and I've never done it. Just recently, I am considering writing a book mainly for the Ukrainian soldiers, because I know the fear they're going through, and having lived in war zones, next year I'll have been in Sudan for 30 years. Now, while we have not been at war all the time, we've always been fighting somewhere in the entire 30 years. And, I'd probably write a book, something like, Surviving in the Valley of the Shadow of Death, or, Living in the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And, because if you have a roadmap of how to pray, how to speak to God, in these situations, it's extremely helped. I remember when I was in the Marine Corps as a young Marine, and I had lied about my age in the 10th grade and joined. And, when we ran in the morning, we'd run in combat boots and, the green fatigues. And I had this one captain named Captain Howerton, and as a general rule, the run every day was about 3 miles. But with Captain Howerton, you never knew how far he was going to run. And one of the things he'd do is he'd run out the base and he'd come back in it, and you think that you're getting ready to stop, and then he'd run out the other side of the base. And, sometimes it'd be 6 miles, 7 miles. One time it was 17 miles. I mean, this guy just was something else. He was a brother in the Lord. He was a great man of God, and really was privileged to be under his command. And so because of that, when I would run, there was a verse in Psalms 121. It says, I look to the hills from whence my strength come, my strength coming from the Lord. And when we would have these long runs, and I was a strong runner, I was very strong. I wasn't fast, but I was strong. I would remember that verse in my head and meditate on it. And God would give me strength to get through those runs, And so I think that that's my hope with the Ukrainian people.
Amen. We have so much more we can cover on Ukraine, but I want to go to a different continent. The Lord has called you and Vicky into 39 or 40 countries.
They were 49.
40 countries, and you're in Latin America. I know we can't go into too much detail on that, but talk to me what's going on. What did the Lord put on your and Vicky's heart about that?
Well, there's a young man down in Peru by the name of Corey. He has a Calvary Chapel down there. I think they have probably between 400 and 500 adults. And what we did in South Sudan, I see Corey doing the same thing in South America. He's got a CBI Bible school. I taught down there earlier this year. I think there was about 75 students, and he's really making disciples of people. Well, we decided to invest over $500,000 into Corey's ministry. One is that while he has a large church, it's Peru, so the tithing every year is probably between $15,000 and $20,000. And Corey does get donations from other people, but not a lot. So I made the decision to support him. And Corey called me and he said, so do I work for your ministry? And I said, no. He goes, am I under the authority of FRM? And I said, no. He goes, Wes, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to bear fruit. I said, Corey, while a lot of people, if they spend money, they feel like they have to own it, I'm absolutely the opposite. Fruit is fruit. And if I give you $500,000 to build a new church, which is what they're going to do, and in the next 30 years, thousands of people come to Christ, that was a great investment, And so I don't mind investing in things like this. And again, the elderly home in Ukraine will be under Fedor, not us. We'll raise sponsors so he can feed the people. The children's home will be under Vitali. We'll raise sponsors, give them the money. But I don't want to oversee it. And, we're building a new CBI Bible school in Uganda right now. And I'll have to figure out who's going to run that because I'm running the chaplains and I don't want any more responsibility. Yeah.
So why are you doing a CBI in the middle of Africa? What's going on with that?
Well, Gerald Hagerman and Don McClure have both been good friends, and I've seen the fruit of Gerald's ministry, specifically with the CBIs. I've seen it held by Don's involvement, and I just really believe that, putting people through a 2-year course, going from Genesis to Revelation, but teaching them how to do ministry on the way is the best way to raise up the next generation of pastors and missionaries. And part of me, guys, as I get older, I've started to think about this a lot lately, that I really don't want to take on more projects because we have so much going on. But it really isn't my choice. It's God's choice. And so if the Lord tells me, I'll do it. What I'm trying to do right now is make sure that everything is self-sufficient. And then when my time comes, I can hand it over to men who will hopefully do a better job than I did.
Amen. Well, Wes, it's been great sitting down and talking to you and getting updated on this. Looking forward to the next time, too. As anything else that you want to say and anything you would like prayer for you and Vicky?
Well, I'd like the body to pray for us. When I came out of Afghanistan in early 2023, I started having real pain in my back, and I found out that I had a nerve in my neck that was It's like if you took a hot dog and you stomped on it, it was crushed like that. And I've had surgery and I've had stem cell, but the pain is a little better, but I'm still got a lot of pain. And recently I felt like the pain's starting to increase again. And, God allows people to go through pain. I hope this won't be for the rest of my life, but if it is the rest of my life, I'm 68, so it won't be too much longer probably, maybe another 10 or 20 years. But it's difficult to work like this. And yet Paul told the Lord that he had a thorn in the flesh, some kind of pain. And the Lord said, he said 3 times he sought the Lord, and 3 times God said, my grace is sufficient for you, because, in your weakness, my strength is perfected. And if this is God's will, so be it. But I would pray that both Vicki and I, Vicki's had an ailment for 20 years, and it's not curable. And she's a great, great trooper. I mean, Vicki's in the Word all the time. She seeks the Lord all the time. She prays all the time. And she's the biggest witness in my life of staying steadfast in Christ. So, yeah, I would ask for prayer for that. And moreover, I think the biggest prayer request, though, is that somehow these 1,000 women that have been abducted into sexual slavery in Syria, that we would be able to get them.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Wes. And I want to thank you for listening again. If for more information, you can find us at frmusa.org, as well as doing a Google search for Far Reaching Ministries. And we have some social media pages. If the Lord is prompting you to get involved, you can go to our website, and there's a Get Involved page, whether that's for the children, it's a different country. We invite you to be part of our ministry. Blessings to you. Until next time.